It was the moment every scientist, every astronaut, every leader had dreamed of: first contact. But what humanity had anticipated as the most profound event in history quickly turned into the most terrifying encounter of their existence. The Ekra arrived without warning, their ships unlike anything Earth had ever seen, vast, oblong, and shimmering with an unnatural glow. The world held its breath as they entered Earth's atmosphere, their technology far surpassing anything humanity had even imagined. The ships hovered in place, calm and imposing, as if daring anyone to challenge their presence. For a week, the Ekra said nothing. They simply watched. Then a message came, a single transmission, carried in a language so precise, so full of gravitas, that even the most sophisticated translation programs struggled to fully grasp it. But the meaning was unmistakable. Stop. For the good of the galaxy, you must stop advancing. It was not a request. It was a plea, a desperate command. At first, humanity stood stunned. The United Nations convened in an emergency meeting, broadcasting the message across the globe. The implications were staggering. Were these beings from the far reaches of the galaxy? Why had they come? And why had they demanded that Earth, a fledgling species only just beginning to break free from the bounds of its own planet, halt its progress? Experts were scrambled. Military leaders and scientists alike debated over the Ekra's motives. Some argued that the message was a bluff, a test of humanity's resolve. Others, more cautious, suspected something far darker at play. The Ekra spoke again, this time through a representative who addressed the world's leaders in real time. The being, tall and commanding, seemed to radiate an ancient wisdom, a presence that made even the most seasoned diplomats uneasy. It did not speak of trade or alliances. Instead, it shared a warning, an explanation of what humanity's future might look like if they continued on their current path. "We have seen your rise," the Ekra said, its voice both calm and heavy with unspoken weight. "Your technology is advancing at an alarming rate. You have unlocked the secrets of space travel, and yet you have no understanding of the dangers that lie beyond your world. There are forces at work in this galaxy that you cannot comprehend, forces that have destroyed civilizations far greater than your own. You are on the brink of awakening them." The world's leaders were in disbelief. Some dismissed the warnings outright, convinced it was a ruse, perhaps a veiled attempt at manipulation. Others, however, took the threat seriously, questioning whether this was an offer of help or a disguised ultimatum. "I am not here to conquer you," the Ekra continued, its voice calm yet charged with authority. "I am here to save you from yourselves. You are a young species, eager and hungry for knowledge, but your progress is too rapid. You are drawing the attention of ancient powers who will not hesitate to destroy you. You have been warned, and now you must choose." It was then that humanity's pride began to clash with its survival instinct. The nations, already fractured by their own ambitions and ideologies, found themselves at an impasse. Should they heed the warnings of a race that appeared so far beyond them, or should they continue to press forward, determined to forge their own destiny? As debate raged behind closed doors, a wave of fear began to spread across Earth. People looked to the skies, unsure whether these visitors were benevolent guardians or harbingers of doom. Scientists scrambled to analyze the alien technology they had intercepted, but even their most advanced systems couldn't penetrate the mystery of the Ekra's intentions. And all the while, the Ekra remained silent, their ships hovering in orbit like silent judges waiting. They were giving humanity a choice, but no one knew what would happen if that choice was ignored. Could humanity truly defy an ancient race with the power to wipe them out? Or would Earth take the safer path, one of submission to avoid a conflict that could bring about its extinction? One thing was certain: humanity's fate now rested on a decision that had never before been so impossible to make. The question echoed through every leader's mind: should we stop? For the first time in history, Humanity faced a challenge that could not be solved through sheer willpower or technology. The ECRA's warning had set Earth's governments on edge, but no one truly understood what was at stake. While politicians debated and military officials strategized, one group of experts was quietly working to uncover the truth behind the ECRA's plea. The United Nations authorized a special task force of scientists, researchers, and military leaders to investigate the ECRA's claims. Their mission was clear: uncover the history of the ECRA, explore their motives, and discover why the galaxy's ancient civilizations feared humanity's technological rise. The task force worked in secrecy, given the sensitive nature of the operation. What they would uncover, however, would change everything. Led by Dr. Eliza Wren, a renowned xenobiologist and expert in alien cultures, the team began by analyzing every scrap of information the ECRA had shared. The ECRA's warning had included fragments of ancient texts, star charts, and strange symbols that, at first, seemed indecipherable. But to Dr. Wren, there was something familiar about them. She could feel it, a sense that the answers lay just out of reach, hiding in the cracks of forgotten history. Weeks passed, and the team made their first breakthrough. A hidden star map, encoded within the ECRA's transmission, depicted a series of ancient, long-dead civilizations, cultures that had flourished and fallen across the galaxy, each one more advanced than the last. But there was one common thread that ran through them all. Each civilization had risen to a point where their technological power became too great, too dangerous. And each one had vanished, either destroyed or lost in the folds of time. What we're seeing here is a pattern, Dr. Wren said, staring at the star map projected across the table. Every civilization that surpassed a certain threshold of advancement collapsed. We're not just talking about wars or environmental destruction. These were species that unlocked something beyond their control. The team's investigations deepened, uncovering more fragments of data, more warnings left behind by the lost civilizations. They discovered encrypted files containing messages of desperation, all urging future species to avoid the same fate. But the most chilling discovery came from a once thriving race, the Uranthi, who had left a final, cryptic message before their disappearance. We reached too far, and in doing so, we awakened something we should never have disturbed. Dr. Wren shivered as she read the words aloud, feeling a growing unease. The Uranthi had been a species that, according to records, had mastered travel through parallel dimensions, harnessed energy from black holes, and even begun to manipulate time itself. Their technology was beyond anything humanity had ever imagined, yet it had led to their extinction. But what had they awakened? The team found no answers in the data they gathered. But there was something undeniable. The ECRA weren't the only ones to have witnessed this pattern. As Dr. Wren and her colleagues dug deeper, they began to realize that there were other alien races, equally ancient, who had warned the ECRA of the same thing. The Galactic Council of Civilizations, an alliance of the most advanced species in the universe, had watched with growing concern as humanity's progress accelerated. As the pieces fell into place, Dr. Wren's team began to suspect the truth. The ECRA weren't merely trying to protect humanity from itself. They were trying to prevent humanity from triggering a cataclysmic event, an event that had already claimed the lives of civilizations far older and more powerful than Earth could ever imagine. The message from the ECRA, once seen as a plea for caution, now seemed more like an ultimatum. The galaxy had seen humanity's potential, and it feared what would happen if Earth's technological rise continued unchecked. The ECRA weren't simply asking humanity to stop, they were begging them. The ECRA have seen the end of civilizations that we could never fathom, Dr. Wren said to the task force, her voice filled with a rare gravity. They know the dangers we're playing with, and they're trying to stop us from making the same mistakes. If we keep advancing, if we don't heed their warning, we might not just destroy ourselves. We could destroy everything. But the deeper they dug, the more questions emerged. If the ECRA were truly trying to protect humanity, Why had they waited until now to intervene? Why had they let Earth's technology reach this point, only to offer their warning at the precipice? And most chilling of all, what was the true nature of the forces that the Ekra were so desperate to avoid? Dr. Wren's eyes scanned the star map again, her thoughts racing. The truth was out there, buried in the data they had gathered. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. They needed more. And time was running out. As the task force continued to dig into the mysteries of the Ekra and the ancient civilizations they had left behind, they stumbled upon a thread that tied all their findings together: a forgotten war. It was a war that had not only scarred the galaxy, but had nearly destroyed it. One so cataclysmic that its memory had been erased from most records. But it was clear now. Humanity was not the first species to face this existential crossroads. The Ekra had fought in that war, and they had paid a steep price for their involvement. Dr. Eliza Wren's team had uncovered an ancient database hidden within the ruins of a long-extinct species, the Theraxis. The Theraxis were known for their advanced knowledge of quantum physics and their mastery of space-time manipulation, their technology so far beyond humanity's understanding that it seemed almost mythical. But what the team had found in their abandoned archives was more than just data. It was a record of the war that had taken place in the dark corners of the galaxy millennia ago. The war had not been fought between species as much as it had been waged between forces that sought to control the boundaries of knowledge and power. The Theraxis had been part of a coalition of species that had unlocked a forbidden branch of science, one that allowed them to transcend their physical forms and tap into the very fabric of the universe. But this power came at a cost that not only led to the destruction of entire civilizations, but also awakened something ancient, something that had lain dormant for eons. The Ekra, it turned out, had once been warriors, guardians tasked with protecting the galaxy from the forces that sought to harness this forbidden knowledge. Their ancestors had fought against the Theraxis and other civilizations that pushed the limits of science and technology, their ranks swelling as more species joined the fight. But the Ekra had not been acting alone. They had been part of a larger, secretive alliance, one made up of the oldest races in the galaxy, the ones who had survived the war and the aftermath. As Dr. Wren read through the archives, the pieces began to fall into place. The war had not been a battle for territory or resources. It had been a fight to contain the misuse of knowledge. The power the Theraxis and others had unlocked was far more dangerous than anyone could have realized. It had been this very knowledge, this ability to manipulate space-time and reality itself, that had caused the collapse of entire star systems and the extinction of species far more advanced than humanity. And the Ekra had paid the price. The battle had raged across the galaxy for millennia, leaving scars that would never heal. Entire civilizations had been wiped out in a bid to prevent this forbidden knowledge from spreading further. The Ekra had been at the forefront of this conflict, fighting to stop the catastrophic potential of an uncontrolled rise in technological power. But their victory had come at a high cost. They had been forced to seal away the most dangerous of these powers, locking them in places beyond reach. But they had never truly been able to eliminate them. Dr. Wren looked up from the data, her eyes wide with realization. The war had been a last-ditch effort to protect the galaxy from itself, and the Ekra were the last line of defense. Their warning to humanity, their plea for Earth to stop advancing, was not just a precaution. It was a reflection of the horrors they had witnessed firsthand. "They've seen this before," Dr. Wren murmured, her voice heavy. "They fought this war. They know the consequences of unchecked progress. The Ekra are not here to conquer us. They're here to prevent us from repeating the mistakes of the past." The task force was left grappling with the gravity of this new information. The galaxy was not some peaceful, harmonious place where civilizations coexisted in balance. It was a fragile web, one that had been nearly torn apart by the ambition of those who had dared to push the boundaries of knowledge too far. And now, humanity was on the brink of doing the same. The question remained, would humanity heed the Ekra's warning? Could they stop advancing, halt their technological rise before it triggered the same catastrophic chain of events that had destroyed so many others? Dr. Wren stared at the star map once more, the stars now seeming more like warning signs than beacons of hope. The fate of the galaxy, and perhaps of humanity itself, rested on the choices they would make in the coming days. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that stopping humanity's progress might not be enough. There were forces at play that were far greater than anyone could comprehend, forces that had already been set into motion. And time, it seemed, was running out. The truth had come crashing down like a starship plummeting through the atmosphere. Humanity was on the cusp of a monumental leap in technology, and yet it had already triggered a warning from a species older and wiser than any civilization that Earth had ever known. The Ekra's desperate plea was more than a caution. It was a final ultimatum. As the task force continued to digest their discoveries, they realized that the stakes were far higher than they had ever imagined. The United Nations convened once more, this time under far more pressing circumstances. Governments that had once boasted of their technological advancements now found themselves at a crossroads, torn between the promise of an ambitious future and the chilling warnings of the Ekra. There was no easy answer, no simple way forward. Every move humanity made now felt like a gamble. Dr. Eliza Wren sat at the head of the table, her face pale and drawn. The data she and her team had uncovered was overwhelming, yet it still barely scratched the surface of what the Ekra were trying to convey. The forces humanity was awakening were ancient, vast, and capable of destruction on a scale beyond anything they had ever encountered. And yet, even with this knowledge, humanity was caught between its hunger for progress and the terrifying reality that such progress might be their undoing. "We have to stop," Dr. Wren said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can't continue like this. Every step we take, every advancement we make, puts us in greater danger. We've seen the pattern. The Ekra have fought this war before. They've lost civilizations before. They've seen the end of species far older and more advanced than us. And they're telling us, begging us, to stop before it's too late." The room was silent. The words hung in the air like an unspoken death sentence. The human race, on the verge of becoming a true intergalactic power, was now being asked to hit the brakes, to halt its drive toward the stars. But not everyone agreed. Across the table, General Marcus Vale, a man hardened by decades of military service, shook his head. "We can't just stop. We've already made too much progress. The world has seen what we're capable of. Our people demand more. If we give in now, we risk losing everything. Our place in the galaxy, our power, our future." "Power?" Dr. Wren shot back, her eyes narrowing. "Do you understand the cost of that power? We're not talking about a mere conquest of space. We're talking about playing with forces that have destroyed civilizations, forces that will not hesitate to wipe us out if we push too far." The tension in the room grew thick. Leaders from every corner of the globe weighed in, arguing both sides with equal fervor. Some, like Vale, believed that humanity's rise to power was inevitable and that it was their destiny to claim their place in the universe. But others, like Dr. Wren, were not so certain. Could they risk everything for the sake of a future that might lead to their extinction? Days turned into weeks, and the debate raged on. But even as humanity wrestled with its choices, something more pressing was unfolding in the galaxy. Alien factions, some old allies of the Ekra, began to take notice of Earth's actions. Diplomatic channels that had once been cordial began to fray. A series of blackouts, energy fluctuations, and even the disappearance of entire fleets raised alarms across the stars. Something was stirring. Something ancient, something powerful, was aware of humanity's advancements, and it was not pleased. At the same time, the Ekra's warning grew more urgent. Their emissaries, once calm and composed, began to show signs of distress. The pleas for humanity to halt its progress became more forceful, more desperate. "Do you understand what you are doing?" they asked, their voices tinged with sorrow. "The galaxy is not a place for you to conquer. There are things here that you do not understand, things that will destroy everything you have worked for. Your actions are drawing attention you cannot withstand." Despite the mounting pressure, humanity remained defiant. Earth's leaders were not willing to back down. The dream of galactic exploration, of becoming a force that would shape the future of the stars, was too great to let go. But the more they pushed forward, the more they risked triggering an unstoppable chain of events. The conflict reached a tipping point when a colony on Mars, humanity's first attempt at establishing a foothold on another planet, went dark. Communication with a colony was lost entirely. There were no signs of sabotage, no trace of enemy forces. Just silence. The loss of the colony, a symbol of humanity's bright future, sent shockwaves through Earth's leadership. Was this an attack? Or had the forces the ECRA warned about already begun to act? Dr. Wren's team scrambled to analyze the incident, but it quickly became clear. The consequences of humanity's technological rise were no longer hypothetical. Something had already begun to retaliate. The cost of progress had become a harsh reality. The decisions made in the coming days would determine whether humanity would thrive, or whether they would be yet another civilization lost to the relentless forces they had unleashed. The clock was ticking, and with every passing moment, the question grew more urgent. Would humanity be able to stop its ascent before it was too late? Or had the point of no return already passed? The silence of space had always been a reminder of how small humanity was in the grand scheme of the universe. But now, as Earth grappled with the consequences of its own technological ambitions, that silence began to feel suffocating. The disappearance of the Mars colony had been a wake-up call, a stark reminder that humanity was no longer in control. Forces beyond their comprehension had started to stir, and they were not happy. Dr. Eliza Wren stood in the command center of the Earth Defense Coalition, staring at the holographic map of the solar system. The map was dotted with unsettling markers, black zones, areas where all communication had been cut off, or where energy signatures had gone silent. Mars had fallen dark. Venus was showing signs of disturbance. And worse, all signs pointed to the fact that these incidents were not isolated. They were deliberate. The ECRA had warned them, but humanity had been too stubborn to listen. Now, the consequences were playing out in real time, and the full scope of what the ECRA had tried to prevent was becoming tragically clear. The forces that the ECRA feared weren't abstract. They were ancient, alive, and actively seeking to put a stop to humanity's unchecked progress. "Dr. Wren, we need to make a decision," General Marcus Vale said, his voice stern. "If we don't respond to these attacks, we risk losing everything. Our colonies, our people, our future." Wren turned away from the map, her mind racing. Humanity was caught between two impossible choices: to stop advancing, to let go of their destiny as the masters of the stars, or to continue their progress and face the wrath of an ancient enemy. But the choice was no longer so clear-cut. As the days passed, the strange energy fluctuations and sudden disappearances had taken on an ominous pattern. There were whispers among the military leaders, rumors of an ancient artifact, buried deep within Earth's crust, that had been activated in response to humanity's rise. They spoke of it in hushed tones, a force so potent that it could control the very fabric of space and time itself. "Do you believe it's real?" General Vale asked, his eyes narrowing. "This artifact, do you think it could be the key to stopping this?" Dr. Wren hesitated. The idea seemed far-fetched, even in the face of everything they had learned about the ancient races and their cataclysmic mistakes. But as the reports continued to pour in, it was clear that something was happening, something they could no longer ignore. "The artifact could be real," she said slowly, her voice quiet but resolute. but we don't fully understand it. If it's connected to the forces we've awakened, then using it might be the only way to end this. But it could also destroy us. We don't know what we're dealing with. The artifact, according to ancient texts found in the Ekra archives, was said to be a key, a relic from a time before the rise of the Ekra. It had been hidden away, sealed beneath earth to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. But now it seemed the forces that had once destroyed civilizations were once again aware of its presence. As humanity's war with the unknown forces escalated, the Ekra reached out again, this time with an even greater sense of urgency. "You don't understand." The Ekra emissary's voice crackled through the comms, the distress evident in its tone. "The artifact you seek is not a weapon. It is a trap. It was sealed away because it has the power to alter the very fabric of existence. It is a remnant of the power that destroyed the galaxy once before. If you activate it, you will not just risk your own annihilation. You will awaken forces that cannot be stopped." The message was clear, yet the implications were impossible to ignore. The Ekra had fought to prevent the misuse of such power, and their warnings had been steadfast. But humanity, desperate and cornered, had no choice but to consider the unthinkable. The artifact's presence beneath Earth had been the final piece of the puzzle. The Ekra had known that if humanity's rise continued unchecked, it would inevitably lead to the activation of this power. The galaxy had already borne witness to the consequences of such ambition, and the Ekra were now trying to save humanity from becoming the next casualty. But the question remained: could humanity stop itself in time, or had it already crossed a line from which there was no return? Dr. Wren stood at the center of the room, staring at the holographic map as the space around Earth seemed to darken. The choice loomed larger than ever: activate the artifact and risk unleashing the full power of the galaxy's darkest secrets, or hold back, knowing that their technology would never reach the stars as they had dreamed. The weight of the decision settled on her shoulders. Whatever they chose, it would change everything. The decision had come down to a single, unbearable truth. Humanity was on the edge of a precipice, and there was no safe way forward. With each passing moment, the forces that the Ekra had warned of grew closer, more powerful, more insistent. The artifact beneath Earth's surface, ancient, enigmatic, and potentially deadly, was now humanity's last hope. But activating it could also bring about their destruction. And yet, if they didn't act, the relentless alien forces would continue their assault, threatening to wipe out everything humanity had worked for. Dr. Eliza Wren stood before the holographic display, her hands trembling as she reviewed the final reports. The forces gathering in the solar system, alien factions, some of them allies of the Ekra, others with their own agendas, were nearing a breaking point. The last communication from the Ekra had been clear. Asterisk, do not activate the artifact. It is not your weapon to wield. You will unleash a power that will consume you. Asterisk. But the human race was not one to back down in the face of adversity. Despite the Ekra's desperate warnings, Earth's leaders, military, political, and scientific, had unanimously agreed to consider the artifact as their only hope. Their technological progress had already triggered the chain of events the Ekra had feared, and now the galaxy's most powerful forces were closing in on them. It was a choice between fighting back with all their might or succumbing to the inevitable. General Marcus Vale stood beside Dr. Wren, his face as hard as ever. "We're out of options," he said, his voice low. "The attacks on our colonies are escalating. Mars is lost, and Venus is next. The Ekra are trying to play us for fools. We need that power, asterisk the artifact asterisk, to fight back." "But you heard them," Dr. Wren replied, her voice tight with emotion. "They said it's not a weapon. It's something else, something more dangerous than we can understand. Activating it might not stop the enemy. It could make everything worse." "Everything is already worse." Vale shot back, his frustration evident. "Our people are dying, Eliza. Our colonies are burning. We've got one shot at survival. We can't just wait for the Ekra to decide for us." Dr. Wren's eyes narrowed as she studied the data, her mind racing. The artifact, the so-called key to the galaxy's most ancient secrets, was buried beneath the surface of Earth, its true nature still shrouded in mystery. No one, not even the Ekra, truly understood what it could do. Yet it had always been there, an ancient failsafe hidden by the oldest civilizations to keep the galaxy from descending into chaos. It was only now, with humanity's rapid rise to power, that it had begun to stir. "We don't know what we're dealing with," Dr. Wren said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "If we activate the artifact, there's no going back. Whatever it is, whatever it controls, will be unleashed." The room fell into silence, the weight of her words settling over the group. The choice was crushing, a decision that would determine whether humanity would survive or be obliterated in the blink of an eye. General Vale's expression softened, just for a moment. "I know the risks," he said, his voice tinged with resignation. "But I also know that if we don't act, humanity will be nothing more than a memory. We have to take this chance. For the future." A deep, aching silence filled the room. The decision was now in their hands. Activating the artifact could be the key to reversing the tide, to giving humanity the power it needed to defend itself against the overwhelming forces arrayed against them. Or it could mean the end, an uncontrolled release of cosmic power that no one could contain. Dr. Wren stepped forward, her fingers trembling as she placed them on the activation console. Her thoughts raced. The artifact's potential was unimaginable. Could humanity wield that power responsibly? Could they truly control the forces they were about to unleash? And yet, there was no turning back. The galaxy was already on the brink of war, and humanity's survival depended on this single, fateful act. With a deep breath, Dr. Wren made her choice. Her fingers pressed the button. The ground beneath her feet trembled as the artifact beneath Earth's surface roared to life. Energy crackled through the air, and the entire command center vibrated with the sheer force of its activation. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. The lights flickered, and the hum of machinery ceased. The universe seemed to hold its breath. Then, a pulse of energy erupted from the artifact, sending shock waves across the planet. The stars above Earth seemed to flicker and shift, as if the very fabric of space was bending. The power of the artifact, of whatever it was, had been released. Dr. Wren staggered back, her heart pounding in her chest. The choice had been made, and now humanity would face the consequences.